Welcome back, deep divers. Today, we are going to tackle something pretty cool. The current trends shaping podcasting in 2024.
That's right.
We've got a mountain of research for this one. Articles, marketing reports, even snippets from an actual podcast script. Seems like things are moving really fast.
Yeah, definitely.
Have you guys noticed any of these shifts yourselves, either in how you're listening or even creating?
Mm-hmm.
What I'm particularly fascinated by is are podcasts becoming the new TV? I mean, are we seeing a shift?
Yeah, well, that's a really interesting question, especially with the boom in video podcasts. Spotify has seen a 39% jump this year in video podcast streams.
Wow.
And even the New York Times is in on it. More than half of their top podcasts now have a video component.
Really? Even the New York Times? Wow.
Right, it makes you think.
Yeah.
Like, think about TikTok. 1.5 billion users.
Right.
All used to visual content. And podcasters are getting smart about this. They're becoming these multi-platform creators.
And they're investing in the equipment to make it happen. Searches for podcast camera are up 117%. And then there's this company, OBS BRT. They make AI-powered webcams for podcasters specifically. Their search growth in the past 5 years is 1,217%.
That's wild.
It is wild.
It really speaks to the growing professionalism of podcasting. It's not just folks messing around anymore. People are really treating this like a business, investing real money to up their game.
Makes sense when you see how much advertising money is coming into the space.
Yeah.
Podcast ad revenue is projected to top $2 billion next year.
Wow.
And get this, almost half of weekly podcast listeners in the U.S., 46%, have bought something after hearing a podcast ad. So that's serious buying power.
Right.
Do you think we're going to see more direct-to-consumer brands moving to podcast advertising?
Oh, absolutely. I think it makes perfect sense for them. Podcast listeners, especially in the U.S., tend to have higher incomes. 56% of podcast listeners have a household income over $75,000.
Wow.
So advertisers love that kind of audience.
Oh, of course.
It's a good deal for listeners, too, because it means that the creators can make great content.
Yeah, absolutely. And platforms like Gumball, Podcorn, Libsyn Ads, they're making it really easy to get into podcast advertising. They're like these marketplaces that connect podcasters with brands looking to advertise.
Exactly.
So that's pretty cool.
All this growth means there's fierce competition among platforms, though.
Yeah.
You know, all vying for listener attention.
Right.
Spotify is currently leading the pack. They've got a 34.4% market share. Apple Podcasts is right behind them, though, at 32.5%.
Yeah.
And there are 9 platforms that are exceeding 1 million downloads per month.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And there was this OFCOM study, and they found that the average podcast listener actually uses 3 different platforms.
3.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's a lot of platform hopping.
It is. But it makes sense, though, when you think about it. Different platforms offer different things.
Yeah.
You know, maybe
Yeah.
it's exclusive shows, better audio quality, particular features.
Yeah. I know. I definitely use a couple different platforms.
Yeah, me too.
For different reasons.
Exactly. And all this fragmentation is making platforms really think outside the box to stand out.
Right.
Spotify, for example, they've poured over $1 billion into podcasts over the last couple of years. They initially went all in on exclusive content, but they've kind of shifted gears recently, moving away from exclusives, and they're trying to become profitable.
Okay.
They're actually getting pretty close to breaking even on their podcast investments.
That's interesting. So it's a very different approach than what some platforms are taking. Like Luminary, for instance, they're still very focused on exclusive content. They've managed to snag some big names like Dave Chappelle, Lena Dunham. Their search growth is up 96%, so people are definitely taking notice.
Definitely.
Do you think that exclusive content is a sustainable strategy long term?
Well, it's hard to say.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Luminary is banking on star power to attract subscribers, kind of like Netflix did back in the day.
Right.
But then you have platforms like Overcast, who are going a totally different route. They're focusing on features like Smart Speed, which cuts out silence to speed up listening, and Voice Boost, which evens out the volume levels.
I see.
Yeah, so they're really all about just making the listening experience better.
Interesting. So no fancy exclusives, just solid features.
Exactly.
It's kind of the minimalist approach to podcasting.
I guess you could say that.
Yeah, and it seems to be working for them. But there's another player entering the game that could really shake things up, and that's Amazon.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they acquired Wondery back in 2020, remember?
I do.
That was a big signal that they were getting serious about podcasting.
It was. And Wondery's search growth is up 44%, and the estimated sale price was somewhere between $300 and $400 million.
Yeah, Amazon definitely has deep pockets and probably some big plans.
For sure.
What do you think they'll do to kind of make their mark on the podcasting world?
Well, for one thing, Amazon doesn't do anything small.
Right.
So they could leverage their e-commerce dominance to integrate podcasts into the shopping experience.
Okay.
Maybe we'll see podcast recommendations based on your purchases or even listening to podcasts while you're browsing products.
Whoa.
Who knows?
That would be wild. It'd be
Yeah.
like this whole ecosystem around podcasts, blurring the lines between shopping and entertainment.
Yeah.
And speaking of shaking things up, traditional ad revenue isn't the only game in town anymore.
Right.
Luminary, with their Netflix-style subscription model, is a prime example. And then there's Patreon, which is becoming incredibly popular with podcasters.
Patreon has seen a 48% search growth, and they have features that are specifically for podcasters. The top Patreon creator overall is actually a podcast, Matt and Shane's Secret Podcast, with over 92,000 paying subscribers.
That is amazing. Clearly, people are willing to pay for the content they really love. Do you think subscriptions are the future of podcasting? Or will it always just be kind of like a niche thing?
Well, it's hard to say. But subscriptions, too, give creators a way to build direct relationships with their most dedicated fans and generate a more reliable income.
Yeah.
And platforms like Patreon make it really easy to manage memberships and rewards.
For sure. That direct connection is becoming more important with the rise of live podcasting.
Absolutely.
Get this, 1 in 10 podcasters are now doing live recordings.
Wow.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. Live podcasting just adds a whole new dimension, You get that real-time interaction with your audience. It builds community. It opens up new revenue streams.
Right. Platforms like Podbean are even letting viewers send virtual gifts during the live shows, which turn into actual money for the creators. So it's like tipping, but for podcasts.
It's amazing.
It is. What kind of live events have you seen?
Well, there's all sorts of stuff out there, Q&A sessions, contests, live coverage of events, phone-in debates. It's really dynamic.
And speaking of live events, in-person podcast events are becoming more and more popular.
Definitely.
Spotify reported that 88% of the Ringer's ticketed events sold out, and 90% of those had sponsors. These aren't just small gatherings either. The Off Menu podcast sold out multiple nights at the Royal Albert Hall in London.
Yeah, it's incredible how podcasts are kind of transcending the digital and bringing people together in real life. It really speaks to the power of podcasts to cultivate these really passionate fan bases. It's not just listening anymore. It's about experiencing the podcast, connecting with the hosts, being part of a community.
It's almost like podcasts are creating their own little fandoms, almost like bands or TV shows do. But with over 3 million podcasts now vying for attention compared to 550,000 back in 2018.
It's crazy.
It is crazy. Podcasters are having to get really creative with their growth strategies.
They are. You're absolutely right. It's a very crowded field. Traditional marketing tactics aren't always enough. Podcasters are having to experiment with new approaches, and one that's proving very effective is cross-promotion. Have you noticed how some of your favorite podcasts will have other podcasters on as guests?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Right.
And then they'll interview each other, and then they'll release those episodes on both of their feeds.
Exactly. It's called a podcast swap, and it's a great way to tap into an existing audience. One case study actually showed a 21% increase in downloads after a podcast swap.
Wow, that's pretty significant.
Yeah.
It's like borrowing each other's listeners for a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
What other cross-promotion strategies are you seeing out there?
Well, social media obviously plays a huge role, but it's not just about sharing links anymore.
Right.
Podcasters are using tools like Opus Clip, which uses AI to generate shareable video clips from their podcasts that specifically target platforms like TikTok and YouTube Shorts.
Oh, that's smart.
Right.
Because those short-form videos are perfect for grabbing attention.
They are.
They're like these little trailers almost.
Yeah, exactly. They give people just a little taste of the content. And Opus Clip has seen an 8,200% surge in searches in just 2 years. So clearly, podcasters are realizing the power of video to reach new audiences, especially those younger listeners that are glued to TikTok and YouTube. And speaking of audiences, the data shows that listeners are increasingly craving knowledge and in-depth discussions. Podcast audiences tend to be well-educated and have higher incomes, which is why advertisers love them.
Yeah, of course, advertisers want to reach people that have the means to buy their products, right?
Right.
But it's interesting that the data also shows that people over 55 have the longest mean listening time, clocking in over 8 hours a week.
That's right. And it really challenges that stereotype that podcasts are just for young people.
Yeah.
And a big part of this is because 55% of podcast listeners use podcasts specifically to learn new things. And for those aged 50 and over, it's the number one reason they listen.
That's really interesting. So they're not only are they engaged, but they're actively seeking out information. It's like podcasts are almost becoming like these new classrooms.
Yeah, it's a really interesting way to think about it.
Yeah. There are learning-focused platforms like Knowable, which is essentially masterclass for audio,
Right.
and they're gaining traction.
And they've seen 26% search growth in the past 5 years, so there's definitely a hunger out there for this kind of content.
Yeah. But while many listeners are seeking knowledge, there's a growing trend, especially among younger listeners, to use podcasts kind of as background noise or a distraction. 70% of 18 to 29-year-olds use podcasts that way.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's like they're multitasking, using podcasts to fill the silence while they work, study, or just relax.
So it's not always about actively listening and absorbing every word. Sometimes it's just about having something on, creating a certain mood or an atmosphere.
Yeah, and this is where the rise of ADHD podcasts comes in.
Right.
These podcasts are designed to be both informative and attention span friendly. They've seen a 367% search growth in the past 5 years.
Wow, that's a lot.
It's huge.
What makes an ADHD podcast different from other podcasts?
Well, they tend to be fast-paced, highly engaging, and they often feature a mix of topics and formats to keep the listener's attention.
Okay.
They might use humor, sound effects, music, even listener interaction, just to create that more dynamic and stimulating listening experience.
So it's all about finding that balance between being informative but entertaining.
Exactly. And then you also have this phenomenon on TikTok where podcast snippets are paired with completely unrelated visuals, which is often referred to as sludge content.
Yeah, I've seen that. It's so weird.
I know, it's bizarre.
It's like watching a music video but with someone talking over it, and the visuals have nothing to do with what they're saying.
I know, it's so strange. But it highlights how our brains are being rewired to crave this constant stimulation. It's something content creators, including podcasters, need to be really aware of. If you want to reach younger audiences, you have to really think about how to create content that captures their attention in this world of distractions.
So maybe it's not enough to just have really good audio.
Right.
You have to think about the visual element as well. Even if it's just creating short video clips to promote your podcast on social media, it's almost like you have to meet your audience where they are, which is increasingly on platforms like TikTok and YouTube.
Exactly. And all of this points to this growing trend towards professionalization in the podcasting industry. Creators are investing in better equipment, software, and even marketing strategies to compete. For instance, searches for podcast microphone are up 47%, and there's a whole ecosystem of microphones specifically designed for podcasting.
Wow.
Popular brands like Shure, Neat King B, the Rode Procaster.
So the barrier to entry is getting higher. It's not just about recording a podcast on your phone anymore.
Yeah, you can't expect to stand out that way.
Right.
And we're seeing the rise of podcast-specific audio editing software like Descript, which has seen a 1,350% surge in searches.
I've heard of Descript, yeah. They have some really impressive features.
They do. They use AI to do some really cool things. You can edit the audio just by editing the transcript,
Wow.
which is super convenient. And they even have these AI voices that can mimic a speaker's voice to smooth out edits.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
So AI is really transforming the production process, making it much more efficient.
It really is.
And it's making it more accessible, too. And this all extends to podcast hosting, right? There are so many platforms now to choose from.
Absolutely.
It's overwhelming.
It is a little bit, yeah.
Established platforms like Buzzsprout and Podbean are still going strong, but we're seeing new players emerge like Castos, which has unlimited podcasts and episodes as its unique selling proposition, and it's seen 67% search growth. Unlimited podcasts and episodes. That's pretty appealing.
It is, especially for creators who are just starting out or who make multiple shows.
Yeah.
And then there are these all-in-one platforms like Podcastle, which has seen an unbelievable 7,300% search growth.
Wow, that's incredible.
It is. They offer everything from recording and editing to publishing and analytics all in one place.
So it's kind of a one-stop shop for podcasters.
It is. It's really simplifying the process, making it as easy as possible for creators to get their podcasts out there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It seems like that's kind of the natural progression as the industry matures. It allows creators to really focus on what they do best, creating the content.
Exactly.
And that content is becoming more and more influential. Did you know that 63% of people trust their favorite podcast host more than social media influencers?
I did know that.
So that's a huge shift in the power dynamics.
It really is. It speaks to the authenticity and the intimacy of the podcasting medium. You know, listeners feel this genuine connection with their favorite hosts, and that trust translates into influence.
It makes sense, you know? It's like inviting someone into your earbuds, into your daily routine. That's a much more personal experience than, scrolling through social media.
Definitely.
Right.
And that trust opens up enormous opportunities for podcasters. It leads to advertising, endorsements, branded merchandise. Platforms like Printify, which allow creators to easily design and sell merchandise, are really seeing this firsthand. They've had 274% search growth in just the past 2 years.
So it's like the rise of the podfluencer.
Yeah, exactly. They're not just content creators anymore.
They're becoming brands in their own right.
Exactly. And all of this is happening on a global scale. While the U.S., with 129.9 million podcast listeners, is still the biggest market, the global potential for podcasting is enormous. Western Europe, for instance, has 111.3 million listeners, and many countries there have a high level of English proficiency.
Right, of course.
So it's a really good opportunity for U.S. creators to expand their reach.
Makes sense. There's that kind of natural cultural overlap, the language overlap between the U.S. and Western Europe. But I'm curious, how global are podcasts already?
Well, it might surprise you, but 1 in 5 podcasts globally have at least half of their audience from overseas.
Wow.
It is pretty amazing.
That is way more than I would have guessed.
It really shows that podcasting isn't just, an American phenomenon.
Yeah.
It's about podcasts from all over the world connecting with listeners across borders.
Right.
And this trend is only going to accelerate as technology continues to evolve. Platforms like Spotify are already experimenting with AI-powered translation that retains the host's voice.
Wait, AI translation? That sounds like the original host. That's incredible.
It is.
It sounds futuristic.
I know, right? Dax Shepard and Stephen Bartlett are involved in this pilot program, so it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
So are we seeing the barriers of language starting to crumble? Podcasts are becoming truly global.
I think so, yeah. It's really interesting.
That's exciting.
It is. And there are companies like Rask AI that specialize in translation services for podcasts. They've had an astronomical 7,600% search growth.
Wow. That's crazy. It's like the whole world is waking up to the power of podcasts all at once.
I think so, yeah. It's a really exciting time to be a part of this rapidly evolving medium.
It is. So, we've covered a lot of ground here, but one thing's clear. The podcasting landscape is incredibly dynamic. Things are changing all the time.
Yeah, it's a fascinating blend of technology and creativity and human connection.
With all these new ways to create, distribute, and experience podcasts, I'm curious, what kind of future do you see for this powerful medium? What does it all mean for you? Whether you're a listener or even thinking about becoming a creator, we'll discuss that and more right after this.
Sounds good. It really is a question worth thinking about. With all these exciting changes happening, what really stands out to me is this merging of audio and visual content. Even big names like the New York Times are embracing video podcasts. It's like this huge acknowledgement that visual storytelling is just so important these days.
Yeah. It makes you wonder if podcasts are becoming their own kind of TV, but with a more personal and on-demand feel.
Exactly. And with platforms like TikTok and YouTube Shorts just blowing up, podcasters are getting really smart about repurposing their content for all these different formats. It's not just about creating one static thing anymore. It's about crafting a whole multimedia experience.
So it's all about meeting your listeners where they are, whether they're on their commute, at the gym, or scrolling through TikTok.
Right. And AI tools like Opus Clip make it so easy to create those bite-sized videos. The potential for reaching new audiences and even going viral is just enormous.
It's like having your own personal marketing team working 24/7 to spread your message. Pretty amazing. And as podcasting becomes more global, translation technology is going to be key. Can you imagine listening to your favorite podcast in any language with the host's voice and intonation perfectly preserved?
It's mind-blowing. It could really change the game for podcasters and listeners. It would open up this whole new world of content and create connections across cultures that we couldn't have imagined before.
It's almost like the Tower of Babel in reverse. Instead of dividing us, technology is bringing us together through shared stories and ideas. That's pretty powerful. It seems like the lines between audio and visual, digital and physical, global and local are all blurring. Maybe the very definition of podcasting will have to change too.
It's definitely evolving. Remember the early days of the internet? We knew it was going to be big, but we couldn't have predicted all the ways it would transform our lives. Podcasting is still relatively young, but it's already having a huge impact. You know, it's changing how we consume information, how we entertain ourselves, how we connect with each other.
It feels like we're just scratching the surface of what's possible with this medium. It's an incredibly exciting time to be a podcast enthusiast. But with all this talk about the future, let's not forget about all the incredible podcasts that are out there right now. There's truly something for everyone, right?
Absolutely. You have the massive mainstream hits like the Joe Rogan Experience and Caller Daddy, but then you also have these niche shows like those ADHD podcasts we were talking about earlier, and even experimental stuff like the Midnight Gospel. With something like 200 million podcast episodes and at least 3.2 million active shows, the challenge isn't finding something to listen to, it's finding the time to listen to it all.
There's so much good stuff out there. It's a good problem to have, I guess. But with so many podcasts vying for attention, discoverability is becoming more and more important.
You're right. It's a battle for listeners' ears, not just among podcasters, but also among platforms. They're all investing in features and algorithms to try and help people find the content that really resonates with them.
It's kind of like how Netflix recommends shows and movies based on your viewing history. It's becoming a really personalized experience, tailored to your individual tastes and interests.
Exactly. And with AI playing a bigger role in this process, the future of podcast discovery is going to be fascinating. Imagine a world where your podcast app knows your mood, your schedule, your interests, and can recommend the perfect podcast to accompany your day.
It's like having a personal podcast concierge. And with Spotify already using AI for personalized recommendations, that future might not be that far off. What do you think? Is that something you'd be into?
I think it has potential, as long as it doesn't feel too intrusive or limit my choices. The key is to use AI to enhance the listening experience, not to dictate it.
I agree. It's all about striking that balance between personalization and freedom of choice. And with podcasters finding new and innovative ways to monetize their content, we can expect even more high-quality, professionally produced shows in the years to come.
Absolutely. The rise of subscription models, live events, and even branded merchandise is really empowering creators to build sustainable businesses around their podcasts.
It's a win-win for everyone. Listeners get access to amazing content, and creators can make a living doing what they love. And as the industry continues to grow and evolve, who knows what other new and exciting possibilities will emerge.
It's a journey full of potential and surprises, and we're all along for the ride.
Speaking of rides, have you noticed how podcasts have become the perfect companion for commutes? It seems like I always see people on the train or the bus with their earbuds in, totally lost in their own little audio worlds.
It's true. 42% of listeners actually tune in while they're driving to or from work. It's a great way to make the most of that otherwise unproductive time.
It's like turning your car into a mobile university or a comedy club on wheels.
Exactly. And with the rise of electric vehicles and autonomous driving, podcasts are going to be even more integrated into our transportation experiences.
Can you imagine a world where your car seamlessly connects to your podcast app and recommends shows based on your route, your mood, or even the traffic conditions?
It's a world where technology enhances our listening experience in ways we can only begin to imagine.
And with the average podcast listener tuning in for over 8 hours a week, that's a lot of potential for innovation and creativity.
It's a testament to the power of audio storytelling to really captivate and engage our minds. It's pretty remarkable.
And with the rise of kids podcasts, this medium is introducing a whole new generation to the joy of audio entertainment and education.
It's a fantastic way to foster a love of learning, spark imaginations, and create shared experiences for families.
Yeah, I've heard some really creative kids podcasts out there. Shows like The Alien Adventures of Finn Caspian and But Why, a podcast for curious kids. They're doing some really cool stuff.
It's a space where creativity knows no bounds. The potential for impact is enormous.
And as technology continues to evolve, who knows what new and exciting formats and experiences will emerge?
Imagine interactive podcasts where listeners can make choices that influence the storyline. Or augmented reality podcasts where the audio content is enhanced with visual elements that appear in the real world.
It's like stepping into the podcast itself. The possibilities are mind-blowing.
And as the lines between podcasting, gaming, and virtual reality continue to blur, we can expect even more immersive and engaging audio experiences.
It's a future where the power of sound is harnessed to transport us to new worlds, connect us with others, and expand our understanding of ourselves and the universe around us.
It's a future worth getting excited about.
Definitely. And with the podcasting industry projected to reach nearly $95 billion by 2028, it's clear that this is a medium with a bright future.
It's a future where the power of voice will continue to captivate, inform, and inspire us.
But as we look ahead to this exciting future, it's important to remember that the true magic of podcasting lies in its ability to connect us with each other on a human level.
Whether it's through laughter, shared experiences, or thought-provoking conversations, podcasts have this unique ability to foster a sense of community and belonging.
It's a reminder that in a world that's increasingly dominated by screens and algorithms, the human voice still holds incredible power.
It's a power that has the potential to bridge divides, spark conversations, and inspire positive change.
It's a power worth celebrating and nurturing.
And as we continue to explore this vast and ever-evolving world of podcasting, let's remember to cherish those moments of connection and inspiration that make this medium so special.
Absolutely. But before we get too philosophical, let's dive back into some of the specific trends that are shaping the podcasting world.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, let's talk about something that's been making headlines lately. The emergence of podfluencers. It's a pretty catchy term, right?
It is, and it reflects a real shift in the power dynamics of influence. With 63% of people trusting their favorite podcast host more than social media influencers, podcasters are becoming major players in the marketing and advertising world.
It's like they're the new tastemakers, people we turn to for recommendations and advice.
Exactly. And with the rise of platforms like Printify, which make it easy for creators to design and sell branded merchandise, podcasters are finding new and innovative ways to monetize their influence.
It's like the merch tables at concerts have gone digital.
Precisely. And with podcast listeners being generally well-educated and affluent, they're a highly desirable demographic for advertisers.
It's a perfect storm for podcasters looking to build sustainable businesses around their content.
And as the lines between entertainment, education, and marketing continue to blur, we can expect even more creative and engaging partnerships between podcasters and brands.
It's a future where the power of authentic storytelling meets the reach and resources of established brands.
It's a future where the possibilities are endless. But as with any rapidly growing industry, there are also challenges that need to be addressed.
That's true. One of the biggest challenges facing podcasters today is discoverability. With over 3 million podcasts out there, it's becoming increasingly difficult to stand out from the crowd.
It's a crowded landscape, and it's only getting more competitive.
So what can podcasters do to cut through the noise and reach new listeners? It seems like a pretty daunting task.
Well, one strategy that's proving effective is cross-promotion, where podcasters collaborate with each other to tap into existing audiences.
We talked about podcast swaps earlier, but what other ways are podcasters cross-promoting their shows?
They can guest on each other's shows, share each other's content on social media, or even partner on joint projects.
So it's about leveraging the power of community and collaboration to amplify each other's reach.
Exactly. And with the rise of social media platforms like TikTok and YouTube Shorts, podcasters are finding new and creative ways to repurpose their content and reach new audiences.
Those short-form video clips are like little digital trailers for podcasts, giving potential listeners a taste of what the show is all about.
It's a smart strategy for capturing attention in a world where our attention spans are, shrinking.
Right. And with AI-powered tools like Opus Clip making it easier than ever to generate those video snippets, it's a trend that's only going to continue to grow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But while technology can play a role in boosting discoverability, it's ultimately the quality of the content that matters most.
You're right. No amount of marketing or promotion can make up for a boring or poorly produced podcast.
Listeners are discerning. They can tell the difference between a show that's been crafted with care and one that's just been thrown together.
So what makes a great podcast, in your opinion?
Well, there's no one-size-fits-all answer, but some common elements include engaging hosts, compelling storytelling, high-quality audio production, and a clear target audience.
So it's about creating an experience that's both informative and entertaining, thought-provoking and relatable.
Exactly. And as the podcasting landscape continues to evolve, it's those shows that prioritize quality and authenticity that will ultimately stand the test of time.
It's a reminder that in a world increasingly dominated by noise and distractions, the power of a well-crafted story delivered with passion and purpose can still cut through the clutter and captivate our hearts and minds.
It's a power worth striving for.
Absolutely. But speaking of challenges, let's talk about something that's often overlooked: the potential for burnout among podcasters.
It's a real concern. Creating a podcast, especially on a consistent schedule, can be incredibly demanding. It's a lot more work than people realize.
So what are some of the things that contribute to podcasting burnout?
Well, there's the pressure to constantly produce new content, engage with listeners on social media, and stay ahead of all the latest trends. From researching and planning episodes to recording, editing, and promoting the content, it can be a full-time job, even for those who are doing it as a side hustle.
Yeah, it's easy to see how that could lead to burnout, especially if you're not careful about setting boundaries and managing your time.
Exactly. And burnout can lead to a decline in the quality of the content, which can ultimately hurt the podcast's success.
So what can podcasters do to avoid burnout and stay energized and creative? What advice would you give to someone who's feeling overwhelmed?
One important strategy is to set realistic expectations and boundaries. It's okay to take breaks, delegate tasks, or even reduce the frequency of episodes if needed.
It's about prioritizing self-care and sustainability over the pressure to constantly churn out new content. I think that's a really important point. It's easy to get caught up in the hustle and forget to take care of yourself.
It is. And it's also important to remember why you started podcasting in the first place. What was it about this medium that sparked your passion and creativity?
It's about reconnecting with that sense of purpose and joy. Why are you doing this? What are you hoping to achieve? It's easy to lose sight of those things when you're feeling stressed and burnt out.
Exactly. And if you're feeling burnt out, it might be helpful to take a step back, reassess your goals, and explore ways to make the podcasting process more enjoyable and fulfilling.
That might mean experimenting with new formats, collaborating with other creators, or simply taking a break to recharge and refocus.
It's about finding a sustainable rhythm that allows you to create content you're proud of without sacrificing your well-being.
It's about finding that sweet spot between passion and practicality.
Exactly. And as the podcasting landscape continues to evolve, it's those creators who prioritize sustainability and well-being who will ultimately thrive.
It's a reminder that in a world that often glorifies hustle and productivity, it's okay to slow down, take care of yourself, and create at a pace that feels good for you.
It's about finding a sustainable path that allows you to share your voice with the world without burning yourself out in the process. Which brings us to another important consideration: the environmental impact of our listening habits.
That's something I hadn't really thought about before. How does podcasting affect the environment?
As podcasting continues to grow in popularity, it's important to consider the energy consumption and carbon emissions associated with this medium. One major concern is the energy required to power the servers that host and stream podcasts.
Those massive data centers use a lot of electricity, don't they?
They do, and with millions of people around the world streaming podcasts every day, that adds up to a significant energy footprint.
And then there's the energy we use to power our own devices, whether it's our phones, laptops, or smart speakers.
Exactly. It's not just about the podcasting infrastructure. It's about the entire ecosystem of devices and networks that support our listening habits. As we become increasingly reliant on cloud-based services for everything, the environmental impact of these technologies is becoming a growing concern.
So what can we do to make our podcast listening habits more sustainable? Is it even possible to enjoy podcasts without harming the environment?
Well, there are a number of things we can do, both as individuals and as an industry.
I'm all ears.
One simple step is to download podcasts instead of streaming them. This reduces the energy required to constantly stream data from servers.
That's a good tip. But sometimes streaming is more convenient, especially if you're on the go or don't want to use up storage space on your device.
I understand. But if you do stream, try to use headphones instead of speakers, as this uses less energy.
Good point. It's all about being mindful of our energy consumption.
And on an industry level, there are a number of initiatives underway to make podcasting more sustainable. For example, some podcast hosting platforms are transitioning to renewable energy sources to power their servers.
That's great to hear. It's good to know that the industry is taking this issue seriously.
And there are also efforts to develop more energy-efficient podcasting technologies and practices.
It sounds like there's a lot of potential for positive change in this area.
There is. As podcasting continues to grow, it's crucial that we find ways to minimize its environmental impact.
It's about finding a balance between our love of podcasts and our responsibility to protect the planet.
Exactly. And by working together, as creators, listeners, and industry leaders, we can create a more sustainable future for podcasting.
It's a future where we can enjoy our favorite podcasts without feeling guilty about our environmental footprint.
It's a future where technology and sustainability go hand in hand.
And as we continue to explore this vast and ever-evolving world of podcasting, it's important to keep these sustainability considerations in mind.
It's about making choices that benefit both ourselves and the planet.
It's about creating a more sustainable and harmonious future for podcasting. Speaking of the future, one thing that's becoming increasingly important for podcasters is developing a strong brand identity.
You're absolutely right. In a crowded marketplace, it's no longer enough to simply create great content. Podcasters need to stand out from the crowd and build a loyal following.
So how do you build a strong brand identity for a podcast? What are some of the key elements?
Well, it starts with having a clear understanding of your target audience.
Who are you trying to reach with your podcast? What are their interests, their values, their pain points?
Exactly. Once you have a good grasp of your target audience, you can start to develop a brand identity that resonates with them.
And that identity should be reflected in everything from your podcast's name and logo to your website, social media presence, and even your marketing materials.
It's about creating a cohesive and consistent brand experience across all touch points, making your podcast instantly recognizable and memorable.
It's like creating a personality for your podcast, something that people can connect with and relate to.
Exactly. And a strong brand identity can help you attract new listeners, build loyalty among existing fans, and even open up new monetization opportunities.
It's an essential ingredient for success in today's competitive podcasting landscape.
Absolutely. But developing a strong brand identity can be challenging, especially for independent podcasters who may not have a lot of experience in marketing or branding.
So what are some tips for podcasters looking to build a strong brand? Where do they even begin?
One important tip is to be authentic and true to yourself. Don't try to be someone you're not, or create a brand that doesn't reflect your values and passions.
Listeners can spot a fake a mile away.
They can. Authenticity is key. Another important tip is to focus on building relationships with your listeners.
It's not just about broadcasting content, it's about creating a community around your podcast.
Exactly. Engage with your listeners on social media, respond to their comments and messages, and even consider hosting live events or meetups.
It's about making your listeners feel like they're part of something special, like they're part of a community.
And when your listeners feel connected to you and your brand, they're more likely to become loyal fans and advocates for your podcast.
It's a win-win. You get to connect with your audience on a deeper level, and they feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves.
Absolutely. And finally, don't be afraid to experiment and evolve your brand over time. The podcasting landscape is constantly changing, and your brand should be flexible enough to adapt.
It's about staying true to your core values while also exploring new ways to connect with your audience.
It's about finding that sweet spot between consistency and innovation.
And by following these tips, podcasters can build strong and sustainable brands that will help them thrive in the years to come.
It's about creating a brand that's both authentic and aspirational, relatable, and memorable.
It's about building a brand that reflects your passion and connects with your audience on a deeper level.
It's about creating a brand that stands the test of time.
It's a journey worth taking.
Absolutely. As we wrap up this deep dive into podcasting trends, I have a final thought-provoking question for you.
I'm intrigued. What is it?
With all these exciting developments and possibilities, what role do you see podcasts playing in your life in the years to come?
That's a great question. It really gets you thinking about the future of this medium and how it might impact our lives.
Will podcasts become our primary source of news and information?
Will they replace traditional forms of entertainment, like television and movies?
Will they become even more integrated into our daily lives, seamlessly accompanying us as we work, commute, and relax?
Or will they evolve into something entirely new, something we haven't even imagined yet?
It's a future full of possibilities, and it's up to us as creators, listeners, and industry leaders to shape the path forward.
It's an exciting time to be a part of the podcasting revolution.
Absolutely. And as we continue to explore this vast and ever-evolving world of podcasts, let's remember to cherish the power of voice, the joy of storytelling, and the magic of human connection.
It's what makes podcasting so special. But we're not done yet. We've got more to explore in our final part. We've talked about so many exciting trends. It feels like podcasting is right on the edge of a golden age.
It really does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
All these trends are pointing to a future where podcasts become even more personalized, even more immersive, even more globally connected.
And as technology keeps advancing, who knows what kind of crazy new formats we'll see? Like, what if we had podcasts that could adapt to our moods or interactive audio dramas where our choices actually change the story?
I mean, those are some really cool ideas.
Mm.
The possibilities for creativity are endless.
And AI, too. I'm so curious to see how AI is going to shape the future of podcasting.
AI could be used for so many things. It could help us discover new podcasts, personalize our listening experiences, maybe even create content itself.
Imagine telling your podcast app, hey, I'm in the mood for a sci-fi comedy with a strong female lead, and it generates a completely unique episode just for you.
That would be incredible. But like any powerful technology, we have to use AI responsibly and ethically.
Absolutely. We don't want AI to take over completely. It should enhance the human element of podcasting, not replace it.
Exactly. It's all about finding that balance between innovation and authenticity, which is something we've seen throughout this entire deep dive.
You're right. We've seen how podcasting can be such a powerful tool for connection, for education, for entertainment. It's a medium that has the potential to really make a difference in people's lives.
It can inform us, inspire us, even challenge us to think differently about the world.
So as we look ahead to the future of podcasting, let's approach it with a sense of excitement, but also a sense of responsibility.
Let's be mindful of the ethical considerations, the environmental impact, and the importance of genuine human connection.
Because at the end of the day, it's those human stories, right, that make podcasting so special.
It's those stories that have the power to connect us, to make us feel less alone, and to inspire us to make the world a better place.
Well said. And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into podcasting trends.
We hope you've enjoyed exploring this fascinating world with us.
We encourage you to keep discovering new podcasts, engaging conversations about the future of this medium, and maybe even creating your own podcast someday.
Who knows? You might be the one to create the next podcasting phenomenon.
That's a great thought to leave on. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.